A written script before me, and I will try to give it a good chance. What I am going to do now is a quotation from Mata Amritanandamayi, the Chancellor of Amrita University, and she gave a message on the World Peace Day on September 21st, 2004. Amma has a desire that everyone in the world should be able to sleep without fear, at least for one night. Everyone should be able to eat to his fill, at least for one day. There should be at least one day when hospitals see no one admitted due to violence. By doing selfless service for at least one day, everyone should help the poor and needy. It is Amma's prayer that at least this small dream be realized. Amma's poignant dream quoted above can give one an idea of the kind of inspiration and drive that inspires us at Amrita University, founded by this great humanitarian spiritual leader. The global context in which Amma shared her dream with all of us is so depressing. Nowhere in the world today there is a single night when people are able to sleep peacefully without fear. Millions of people all over the globe are suffering from hunger. They do not have even one square meal a day. Every day in different parts of the world, violence of man against man is killing and wounding hundreds and thousands of innocent children, women and men. Amma has been traveling all over the globe for a quarter of a century and has listened to millions of suffering people. She speaks from her direct experience. This is a real crisis facing us today, the suffering of millions everywhere. In order to address this global crisis, we must try to ascertain the root cause of this colossal suffering of mankind, brought to play upon mankind by none other than mankind themselves. Sometime in 2008, one of the authors asked an assembly of more than 200 MBA students at Amrita, can you say in one word what is at the root of the current crisis? The entire group shouted in unison, greed, and that has been discussed here also. The IPCC chair, Rajendra Pachauri, while receiving the Nobel Prize, quoted Mahatma Gandhi saying, there is enough for everybody's need, but not enough for anybody's greed. We therefore offer this hypothesis: greed amongst powerful people in the world is at the root of the present crisis. In human society, we need a system of governance. In all such systems, including the democratic system, power to govern has to be vested in some individuals. This leads us to yet another famous saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We should perhaps be searching for an oxymoron if we expect people in power not to be corrupt. Is that always going to be so? Do you not have any solution? Is the human society then doomed to perpetual suffering at the hands of the powerful? If that be so, we have no hope for a solution. But fortunately, the rishis, seers and sages of ancient India had found solutions for sustenance of mankind in spirituality or dharma. Adherence to spiritual or dharmic principles can help a person in power to be endowed with strong human values, and thereby we may have a solution in spirituality. Professor S.K. Chakravarti, proposes the Rajarshi model of governance that has also been mentioned here. The word Rajarshi is a combination of two words, Raja, the king, and Rishi, the sage. Sri Rama is believed to be an ideal model. Here, yesterday, we mentioned, Dr. Dave mentioned Ashoka, Jamshedji Tata, and Mahatma Gandhi. Very contemporary examples. Such a person has the ability to rise above his personal desires and ambitions in the material world, and this person is solely driven by the concerns of the welfare of his people. This is where the principles of spirituality come in, and we have to teach this to our people. The educational system in a society or a nation should help to develop a noble value system in its citizens. In order that the desired spiritual values are understood and accepted by the population, both those in power and those who are not, we need to incorporate the teaching of these principles at all levels of education in a country. In other words, true education is the only means available for dissemination of the ideals and philosophies that we want to govern the lives of a nation with. With this idea, we turn to a brief discussion of these principles. In this section, we will briefly touch upon the relevant teachings of Swami Vivekananda, Tagore, Gandhi, and Amma. We have already looked at a teaching, a quote from Amma. Let's look at two sayings of Swami Vivekananda. 100,000 men and women, fired with the zeal of holiness, fortified with eternal faith in the Lord, and nerved to lion's courage by the sympathy for the poor and the fallen and the downtrodden, will go over the length and breadth of the land, preaching the gospel of salvation, the gospel of help, the gospel of social raising up, the gospel of equality. One more quote. So long as the millions live in hunger and ignorance, I hold every man a traitor who, having been educated at their expense, pays not the least heed to them. Strong words, no doubt. But that is precisely what is necessary in order to shake away the complacency of the educated middle class in India and elsewhere. It is interesting to note that Swamiji considers that sympathy for the poor, the fallen, and the downtrodden would give us courage of a lion. Why should one require the courage of a lion if one wants to sympathize with the poor? Swamiji must have foreseen the tremendous opposition one would face if one tries to bring in equality and help raise the downtrodden in society. This is perhaps the reason that he had sought people with strong faith in the Lord, with a zeal for holiness. It is equally interesting to note that he expected these young men to preach the gospel of equality, social upraising, help, and salvation in the reverse order. He saw no difference between the search for salvation and service to the needy, to help them overcome their circumstances and rise up in the social order. According to him, every educated Indian must feel the obligation to help the fellow Indian by removing hunger and ignorance. He also hinted at implied social injustice as he remarked that the educated have got their education at the cost of the underprivileged members of the society. It is not charity he is expecting. He considers it to be the bounden duty of the educated Indian. We can find echoes of Swamiji's words in the writings of Tagore and Gandhi. Tagore has said, in every nation, education is intimately associated with the life of the people. For us, modern education is relevant only to turning out clerks, lawyers, doctors, magistrates and policemen. He further says, we must try to understand how Indian genius expressed itself. How, unless we try to put those together and discover the integrating factors behind these diverse streams of thought and make them a subject of study at our universities, we would only be borrowing knowledge from abroad. We now turn to Gandhiji for his views on education. Man is mere intellect, not the gross animal body, nor the heart or soul alone. A proper and harmonious combination of all the three is required for the making of the whole man and constitutes the true economics of education. Education is not an aim in itself, but rather an instrument, and that of education can alone be, and that type of education can alone be real education, which helps us in the building of sound character. Where education aims at building of character, the old teacher-discipline relation is absolutely necessary. I would revolutionize college education and relate it to national necessities. These quotes show that all our national leaders in the pre-independent India visualized a true holistic education for us, enabling such an education to lift the condition of our masses and strengthen our national culture and traditions. Education for the heart and development of the soul of the human being was never separated from education for earning a living. But even after 65 years of independence today, our education system does not reflect the life needs of our people. We are still heavily dependent on knowledge developed in the Western world. We appear to be focusing only on the apparent differences within our nation. There have not been many efforts at unearthing the underlying integrating factors that have enabled India to survive millennia of onslaughts from all over the globe. The spiritual foundations of India are believed to be at the root of this strength, and also the appearance of an unbroken stream of extraordinary spiritual reformers and thought leaders. What are some of the characteristics of these spiritual foundations? The most important ones are perhaps a belief in the indestructibility of the Atman, belief in rebirth and spiritual evolution of the soul till it attains moksha or liberation. A way of life prescribing the four purusharthas, also mentioned here, dharma, artha, kama and moksha, which is rooted in spirituality, but gives due importance to worldly desires and monetary resources in order to fulfill them, and above all, a firm faith in God and His divine wisdom and protection. Lord Krishna, chapter 4, verse 7 said, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijammayam. The translation goes as follows: whenever and wherever there is a decline in dharma, O descendant of Bharata, and adharma gains ascendancy, at that time I incarnate in this world to counteract adharma and to restore dharma to its rightful place. The above promise that Lord Krishna made to Arjuna is so deeply rooted in the consciousness of the Indian man that this is what we believe has helped India survive along with other beliefs and can help the world today to survive. This famous Bhagavad Gita verse lets people of this country know that the divine always supports dharma, and this deep-rooted knowledge and the consequent faith allows people to adhere to a dharmic way of life as much as they can and to help them tide over the problems when the times are adverse. Spiritual principles are the very foundations of life, and a revival of these principles in the lives of all citizens of the globe may offer a solution. India has been a blessed land with the unbroken link of great divine incarnations, saints and sages. Amma, who is currently with us, is an important link in that chain of realized souls to have taken birth in this great country. She is re-establishing the teachings of the ancient rishis through her educational institutions and other activities. In order that the teachings based on these spiritual principles percolate down to the entire nation and the world, we need to examine the system of education and find out ways and means of spreading these teachings to the masses. I have got a chat, so I have to cut short my written text, but the third chapter dealt with the higher education and nation building, and the essential point there is that education, and particularly higher education, has been seen throughout the ages as a very means to figure out how a nation develops and progresses. Unfortunately, even today, the education system that we are following in India was created by Lord Macaulay, and here is what he has written and said. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us, that is the British, and the millions whom we govern, a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in tastes, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. To that class, etc., etc. And there is another saying which says, I have never found one among them, that is those people in India with whom he interacted, who could deny that, and this is his statement he's putting in on our mouth, a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature in India and Arabic. The intrinsic superiority of the Western literature is indeed fully admitted, etc., etc. So, an education system was created by a power who wanted to govern a nation. And after 65 years of independence, we are following the same system. What I will conclude by saying that at Amrita, we are trying, we are only trying to bring in a system of education where our value systems are brought in, and what we are trying to do is try to bring in daily, every day, 10 minutes, just 10 minutes of time. 5 minutes in the class, we give the students an opportunity for stilling the mind by following simple pranayama principles that were taught here. And remaining 5 minutes, we start with a prayer. And I will just try to take your permission to chant one prayer of that one, and with that I will end, and that will be the finishing of my listing. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Namah Shivaya.